was doing with my story at all. Having said those things, God was going off of a different script. And here's what that script was. My name is Amy Skogerboe. I'm a pastor's wife from just outside of Chicago. I am a mom to 5 grown sons, and now I'm a foster mom to 3 littles. There's currently a 2-year court-mandated restraining order of protection keeping my adopted son from our family. I have seen him once in the last year and a half. He was sitting homeless on a bench with a backpack of his belongings as I walked out of a late movie in our community. I had gone to see The Sound of Freedom, which deals with, as some of you know, the exploitation of vulnerable children, and my son was outside spending that night on a bench, and I saw him with his backpack. That's the only time that I've seen him. We literally, my husband Josh and I, have a prodigal son. My husband and I are raising the children of 2 different bio fathers who have served multiple prison sentences for possession and domestic violence. They are also the children of 3 different bio mothers with severe mental health issues. 2 of these moms are homeless and currently on the street. Josh and I have been married for 29 and a half years, but we barely made it to 24. I'm 52 years old, and I am still learning what it means to love and be loved. Following 3 years of a battle with a digestive health condition, diverticulitis, I was hospitalized this last year in 2023 4 times for a total of 36 days. And I've undergone 3 major surgeries. One of those surgeries was an emergency procedure, which cut my abdomen entirely open to save my life, as the surgeon in my first surgery had accidentally nicked a hole in my small intestine, causing me to go septic. At the time of that surgery, and almost 3 weeks spent in the hospital, I was fostering 5 children under the age of 8. I could not walk without assistance for a month, and I averaged 300 steps a day for 2023. Could not join you on the march yesterday because of that. And that really bothered me. But I'm healing and I'm getting there. I'll be marching with you sometime. I have been medicated for depression and anxiety for over 20 years and have struggled with both of these for as far back as I can remember. My anxiety can be paralyzing and brings me to my knees. I've suffered panic attacks before presentations and while I was speaking at the mic. It's not going to happen this morning. You can chill on that one. You think, for you, yeah. I have lived under this umbrella of feeling lonely and mentally fragmented for the majority of my life. I often feel as though I don't belong in the group setting that I'm in, and I desperately pray often that God will make me whole. Friends, I'm broken. I'm broken. And it's partially for these reasons and these aspects of pain in my life that I was asked to speak to you guys today. I wouldn't have chosen it had you asked me in any decade of my life would I have chosen to be the broken girl. No, but I don't regret it. I don't regret it. It is my story. I was also asked to speak about joy. How in the world? Given what I just read off to you about my bio, how is it that joy is a primary component of my life? There is no way on this earth that joy can be derived from that background and set of circumstances. So where is it coming from, this joy that defines me and many other believers like me with even harder stories to those who know us best? In the words of my generation, what gives? That is where this beautiful dance of divine intervention and pain and the miracles of the gospel and our brokenness begin to make God-written stories out of our messed up lives. And your story this morning, no matter what your area of brokenness, whether you even know you have it yet or not, for everything you've already experienced or struggled with, and for everything that's coming, your story has already begun, and it's being written. And these components of your life that you may deeply regret right now may be, likely, some of your strongest tools of ministry in the years that are coming ahead. Your pain, your stuff, in the hands of a sovereign God, surrendered to him for his purposes and his glory. That is your story, your God-written story that is happening now and that is coming in your life. So, there's 3 kinds of stories. There's probably a cajillion different kinds of stories that we could talk about as far as God writing our stories. But I focused in, as I was planning and thinking about this, there were 3 different themes that came to mind. And they're going to touch on all of us that are here. Some of them more in common. We have more in common with each other. Some of them are a little bit more radical. But one of them, types of stories that God likes to tell with our lives and powerfully uses in and through us, is a theme that I'm going to call beauty from ashes, okay? And there's an image that's coming up right now. It's a 9/11 memorial. I am of the 9/11 generation, and I know there's others of you in here too. Those of us that were living at the time of the attacks and when the towers fell, even if you were not yet here for 9/11, and if you're coming, I think we're in a generation now where some of you are coming just after that happened, am I right? Your life is still affected by what happened, and I would argue that you are the 9/11 generation, because historically you will be more informed as to what happened that day and more affected by it culturally and in our country and politically than those that will come after you. So you too have a role in the 9/11 generation. So there's this memorial, and the images, as you look at it, the images that come to my mind were serene, beautiful, reflective, honoring stillness. There's this quiet, beautiful peace. But that's not what was. It's not at all what was. Before the time of this monument, there was an entirely different reality. 2 towers of promise and prosperity. In our country, they were symbols of wealth. These were people that had made it, a lot of them were living out the careers they had dreamed of, the stories that they would want to be known for, a lot of success, a lot of business, life success. Nothing wrong with that. They'd worked hard for that. Those were the stories that were being told. And then, total, complete obliteration. Evil, destruction, death, war. For those of you that lived it during that time, you probably share with me this memory of the dust. It was so sickening, guys. It was unreal. We'd never seen anything like it before. The people walking on the streets and walking out of that destruction did not look human. Okay? It was a zombie effect. And the blood that stood out on that dust was so traumatic for those, obviously, that lived it, and for those of us that saw it, it made no sense. Everything that we had known changed. As we watched those planes hit the towers come down, and the survivors, so few survivors that walked. Most of those people covered in dust were not in the buildings, of course. They were just near to it or on the streets around it. But it was suffocating, that dust and that dirt, whatever that was, that white stuff that came when the towers fell, had such an impact on us. There was nothing substantial that was left standing. There was nothing to redeem or restore. When obliteration happens, there's no raw materials left to work with. There's nothing left. What was in your life is gone. And you have to start over. Has that happened to you? Has that happened to you? Your own version of the walls coming down. I own a business called Legacy Bracelets, and I make bracelets with people's photos on them. And one of the most poignant requests that I get are memorial bracelets for moms that have lost their kiddos. When I say kiddos, the last one I did right before we flew here, she was 26 years old. And the one that I'm doing as soon as I get back, I think he was 19. He was 19 years old. Car accident. Something that happens suddenly that radically changes everything. You know, some of you guys have been through that already. You've lost somebody. Suicide does that to people and does that to families. They can't go back to what was. It's not there anymore. And for some of you, you're going to have those sudden experiences. And I don't say that to be dire. I say that because it's a part of our life experience here. And this is one of the stories that God tells, and I've watched him tell it in the lives of many of my friends. And if you know that that's coming, you won't be as rocked as you could be when it comes, because you'll know to look to the source and the author that is writing the story. You won't choose everything, and you won't choose everything that's in your life right now. Am I right? Some of it you'd already like to leave behind. But those moments where everything is destroyed, you get betrayed. One of the most painful experiences I ever had was the betrayal of a fellow, very close believer. It was horrific. It was destructive. It challenged my faith. And I think I was in my 30s, close to 40. You don't get to go back when something like that happens, because what was doesn't exist anymore. You have to go forward. And God has to rebuild you and rebuild your life circumstances in a way that you would not have chosen. It's new, different materials. And guys, in essence, what I'm talking about here too is our faith story, our salvation, our redemption, our coming to Christ. Am I right? The old is gone. The new has come. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, this person is a new creation, new material. The old things have passed away. Behold, all things are become new. That is how God intended it. We try to hang on to some of the old. God's plan for us is obliteration of the old man in you, and the new man comes alive. Do not call to mind the former things. Pay no attention to the things of old, he says in Isaiah 43:18. And then the verse, I've been crucified with Christ. I no longer live. Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God. What I was is no more. How many of you are chosen? No, that sounds like I'm asking you a spiritual question. How many of you watched The Chosen? I was going to say chosen watchers. How many of you watched The Chosen? Okay, you'll understand when I say this line, I was one way. Now I'm completely different. And the thing that happened in between was him. I was one way. And now I'm completely different. And the thing that happened in between was Christ. Was Christ. That is our beauty to ashes story. What you were died. What he created in you lives. And he lives in you. The only way forward was him. Therefore, he receives all of the glory. You didn't do it. You didn't rebuild yourself. God did it. If you rebuilt yourself, it's coming down again. And it probably won't be very long. But what God builds in you is eternal. Second kind of story that I want to reference. I called it Diamond in the Rough. If the Great Flood was an obliteration and everything was wiped out and we had to start all over again, beauty from ashes, that's that story. Then Noah, his family, and the ark are our diamond in the rough story. God looks at our lives and sees what is of him and what needs to go. There's a prayer, and Josh, we were talking about this last night. I think it's out of Psalm 139, towards the end of 139. I apologize if that's the wrong reference, but it's search me, O Lord, know my heart. See if there be any wicked way in me, and if there is, anybody? Root it out. That is such a courageous prayer to be praying. Guys, I encourage you to start praying it as early in your lives as you can. God, look in me. And the stuff that needs to be removed from my life, refined from my life, for me to go forward in your purposes most effectively, take it out. Take it out. Diamond in the rough stories. What are the things that we grab onto? Chosen areas of brokenness. Anger, I'll be honest, anger fuels me. Dangerous part of my personality. Some of you know that about yourselves too. Cursing and foul language, the language of the world, right? Emboldens. Feels like it. Feels like it's stronger. I'm going to put in this tiny pitch right here because I've had Christians push back on me so much about cursing and the words not having meaning and this kind of thing. And you will choose that for yourself. Some of you already have. You're going to choose what your language is for your one time around the earth while you're here. And I tell you what, if you have lived close in proximity to somebody with mental illness who is extremely far away from the Lord by choice, that is the language. That is their language. It is rage. It's filthy. Those are the words that come from the world. If you want that to be a part of your heart, your life, your mind, you can choose it. You'll have the impact of that on your spirit. I would challenge you, if that has been your tendency, to look at whose words those are and what impact that has, and consider that a possible area of refinement. We got to stand out while we're here, guys, or we're going to blend right in. We're going to blend right in and have no impact at all. And that is one area that the world watches. They watch it. What comes out of your mouth? Are you one of them? Do you blend? Sin amuses and energizes us. Addiction soothes and pacifies us. We are held fast, oftentimes, in rock, and we don't even know it, even as believers. We're paralyzed from our purposes. We're buried, and we don't even know it. We are accustomed to the coal and the immobility. It is apathy and complacency, and it is a killer. It is a killer. One of the most dangerous things I've observed in my lifetime is the complacency of believers and the complacency and apathy within myself for even having the gumption, the passion to feel the urgency of the need for salvation for the people around me. It's not natural. It's not natural. It's something you pray for. It's something you ask for. It's another area of refinement that God can do. We are wasting our lives in the dark and the filth of the caves of our own making, but God. But for God. But God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us while you were still embedded in rock. And you'll see the hand reach out there in that one image to get that rock. And that is the hand of God. Not satisfied to let you ride out this one precious life that you have in apathy and complacency. God is not satisfied with that. Don't you be satisfied with that. Get out of the rock. Allow God to remove you, to free you up. Don't carry the stuff you're carrying, so that you can do what you were purposed to do, what you were brought here to do. God sees us and he intervenes. He reaches down and does this critical work of refinement so that we can shine and better reflect his glory, the one writing the better story, so that our stories are worth being told. I want to tell you a personal story here of two little diamonds in the rough. This is a story that our family has been honored to have a front row seat in for the past years and for the indefinite future in our lives and in theirs. 4 years ago this week, I met on Facebook in our area, don't suggest that, a homeless mama, very young, and I could tell right away, extremely naive, probably mentally challenged, some other circumstances. And she had a little 1-year-old boy. She was evicted from a shelter, and that night we took her into our home. It was on a Monday night in January. Tuesday, her water broke. Wednesday and Thursday, I helped deliver the baby in the hospital, and I cut the cord. She had nobody. She had nobody. That little girl is now in my home 4 years later as my foster daughter. That baby. And her brother, who was 1 at the time that Kimmy was born, Calvin, is also with us. The mom was not able to do what she needed to do, and those little ones came to us for 2 years. After being with us for 2 years, the courts decided to do what's called a reunification. They went home to a homeless mom expecting another baby, and had had one in between. Dad was coming out of prison, and these 2 little kids were put back into that circumstance. And for a year, we watched these little diamonds in a circumstance that looked like black rock. And we lived close enough and were closely enough connected that we were able to watch it and watch the impact on their lives of complete erratic life behavior choices. Almost a year to a day later, those 2 little kiddos were miraculously lifted out of that circumstance and brought back to our home, covered in lice, traumatized, hurt. There were new charges that were involved. And we had the opportunity to watch God consecrate these 2 little lives by taking them out of that black rock and removing them entirely from that situation. Refining, healing, cleansing, dealing with trauma. Still will be for years and years, of course. But those little kiddos, a year later now, shine, you guys. They shine. And for some reason, they are both so deeply in love with Jesus. And I think the oldest one, particularly Calvin, kind of knows that he was rescued and that he was saved. I think he knows it. He loves his bio mom. He loves her deep, but he knows because he kind of remembers. Kimmy's a little spitfire, and we had prayed through that whole time, Lord, make her resilient. And she did. She came back like fireworks. I mean, I can't even explain to you what her spirit is like, and the life and the spunk and the wit. She seems unfazed. She's not, but she seems like it. Calvin, on the other hand, will look at Josh and say, am I home? This is home, isn't it? Is this my bed? This is my bed, isn't it? Diamonds in the rough. Parts of our life. It could be that your life is in a place right now that is rock. That isn't where you want to be or should be. And God wants to move you right out. If it's not you, guys, it's somebody close to you. Somebody close to you in your life, if not you, needs to be moved by miraculous divine intervention out of the rock. And for some of you, you're believers embedded in rock that you've allowed to accumulate in your life. And you need to be chiseled out of it. And it's painful. It's painful. There's nothing fun about it. However, when you go through the refinement and those things in your life are put to death as well they should be, you have the opportunity to shine differently and reflect the one who saved you and lifted you out. And that is a different life. That's a totally different way to live, reflecting his glory, being a mirror image of his love. His stories and not ours. 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 10. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. You are not going to save yourself. The world will tell you you can and you should. You are enough. Heard that one? If you haven't heard that one, you are under a rock. You are enough. Well, maybe I should say that. It's all over Instagram, and it's mostly women in their 30s, 40s, 50s probably, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere. You're enough. You're enough. Shouting it to each other, putting signs on and posting selfies and everything. You're enough. You know what? You're not. You cannot save yourself. You cannot. And anybody who tells you that you can and that you have it within yourself is a liar. They're lying. They're telling you do it without the Lord. And guys, don't. Don't. Don't for a second. Doesn't make you weak to acknowledge that you need his redemption and his refinement. It makes you strong. You know the source. We are afflicted in every way, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are persecuted, but not forsaken. We are struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. You are here to tell his story of his power and not your own. The third kind of story that I want to mention to you today, and that I took a closer look at, was what I'm going to call search and rescue. And there are these experiences in our lives as believers that we'd never choose, that are out of our control, sudden chapters that pop up and swallow us whole, a diagnosis we didn't expect, horrible car wreck with far-reaching consequences, a divorce that is way too close to home. And I would venture percentage-wise that some of you have been right in that boat. Depression we never realized that we had before. Things that are so traumatic that it's as though we fall into them, plummeting through the darkness and the unknown, the unwanted, no longer knowing which end is up, let alone knowing how to get back to the light. And we desperately miss the light. Jessica's story. This is before your time for most of you, but not all of you. I see some in my age group. This was the first thing that came to mind as I was doing search and rescue and digging and looking at stories, was the story of baby Jessica. Oop. I have to pull this out here. Josh, do you have my baby Jessica story? Oh, I got it. Okay. A real-life drama gripped the nation in October of 1987. 18-year-old Jessica McClure fell 22 feet down a dry water well while playing in her aunt's backyard near Midland, Texas. It's not clear how she wound up there, since the abandoned well had been covered with large, heavy rock. The opening to the well was only 8 inches wide, far too small for rescuers to enter. So a way had to be devised to rescue her from the deep shaft. The plan was complex and would take time to carry out. Workers would have to drill a wider shaft next to the small well, then drill a tunnel to connect the two wells. I still remember those sketches and drawings in my mind that I saw in the newspaper. Using the larger shaft, a rescue worker would have to go down to reach her, get her, carry her to safety. The process took time because they were working with hard rock. After the first day, the family and rescue workers grew more desperate. Was she still alive? Had the fall rendered her unconscious or worse? To find out, a technician lowered a microphone into the well, and to everyone's surprise, they heard her singing to herself. Remember, this is an 18-month-old little girlie. Other times, they heard her moans, realizing the little girl was injured. Because of the fear of internal injuries, medical personnel decided not to send food or water to her, fearing it would do more harm than good. But time was running out. 1 day passed, then a second day passed. Jessica remained trapped underground as drillers worked around the clock to save her. 58 hours after she fell into the well. On October 16th, 1987, she was rescued. A worker carried her in his arms as they were hoisted up the shaft and to the surface. It was a dramatic moment seen by millions on live TV. Jessica was rushed to the hospital, received treatment for a head injury and cuts and bruises. Doctors removed part of her foot due to gangrene. McClure is now in her late 30s and is a mother herself. She was recently quoted as saying that her life has been a miracle, and many who witnessed the ordeal she went through in 1987 would likely agree. And I'm one of those. I remember she was gone. She was lost. We had no idea if she was coming out of that hole. It is a kind of story, search and rescue, that God tells with our lives. And it is a powerful one. It is a powerful one. This ties into my story from this past year of my life. The hole that I fell down was created accidentally by a surgeon as he was doing a fairly routine surgery to remove a small section of my intestine that was prone to a painful infection called diverticulitis. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that or not. I had to Google it. During surgery, he nicked a hole in my small intestine, which quickly led to a drop in blood pressure, sharp rise in pain, infection, and white blood cells as I rapidly became septic from the toxins escaping into my system. What transpired next can best be summed up simply as trauma. Guys, my mind couldn't handle what happened. And I detached from reality for 7 days. I don't have those 7 days. And I was told by the surgeon and the physicians and the staff there that my mind was self-protecting in an effort to simply survive. I don't have much memory other than hallucinations from those 7 days. I have one. I cried out to God. I lost my mind and I knew it. Did not know my name. Could barely move. Hooked up to a whole lot of stuff. I remember I desperately cried out to God and hoped that he was real. That's where my mind was at. Lord, show me that what I have believed for 52 years of my life is real. Please show yourself. Please show yourself. My husband was there, standing and talking to me. For all of those days, I have no memory. I thought he had died. I thought I was driving a car and he had died, along with the children that I care for. I don't know why my mind went there, but it was hell. I don't know why God allowed it. I'm not sure yet. I'm just being honest. I'm still working through that. When I was asked to speak on brokenness, I got some big questions. This was a hard break. This was a very hard way to be broken. And I was living for him. And I am living for him. But there was a part of me in those moments, and there will be in you too, going, Lord, really? Was this necessary to this extreme? To this extent? I cried out to God. And guys, he heard me. Straight out of the Psalms, he heard my cry. He had mercy on me. He answered me. He rescued me. And 7 days later, my husband walked in one morning into my room, and I knew who he was. And it began to clear. Wherever I was, I began to return from. God held me when no one else could reach me. He renewed my faith in him. He restored my mind. He caused my body to heal, and he still is. He found me. And he not only brought me back to the light, he is my light. I say again, I don't know your stories. Some of you have already had those moments, and some of you, they're still coming. And all I can say to you guys, he's your light. He is the light. And should you fall down a hole that you cannot get out of and find yourself trapped in rock with no sustenance, injured, cry out. Your God saves. and your God does not abandon you. Pressed, but not crushed. Persecuted, not abandoned. We just aren't here for the easy life. The easy stories that we hear only go so far. Am I right? I don't know anymore that I'm as impressed or amazed by the story of I was really good at it, and then I got better at it, and then I kept getting better at it, and I never lost. I'll tell you what stories reach me now. I lost everything. I lost everything. But God reached me there, found me there, restored me there, rebuilt my life. Those are now the stories that I champion, that I hear. Diamonds in the rough, towers that came down, and things that were built out of new material. You can ask yourselves why. Why this dance of pain with purpose? Why? Why didn't God just put us here for a whole bunch of good stuff? Share it together and go home to heaven. It's kind of a cool story in and of itself. Why? And I found my answer in 1 Peter 1, 3-9. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for you, who by God's power are being guarded through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. And in this you rejoice. But, though now, for a little while, I call that my even though now, if necessary, you've been grieved by various trials. You're going to be tested, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes in the fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Though you have not seen him, you love him. Though you do not now see him, you believe in him and rejoice with joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory, obtaining the outcome of your faith, which is the salvation of your souls. And here's what that passage says to me, friends. We were saved. That's where we were. We're going to heaven. That's where we're headed. Okay? Our reward is secured. Even though now, for a while, there's going to be some trials, and when those happen, what will result from your life, if surrendered to Christ, is a whole new kind of expression of joy and worship and glory. You will know what you're talking about when you worship on a Sunday morning. You will know because you've so deeply internalized God as your Savior, God as your rescuer, God as your refiner. You will have lived and breathed it. And for those of you that go to worship on a Sunday and still stand back, and this is, I recall, you don't feel it. I know the speaker last night talked about not making feelings the crux of your wheel. But that can be really frightening in your 20s, in your 30s, when you don't feel it when you're worshiping. When you're like singing, God, you are an awesome God. And you're like, I don't think I'm feeling what the people around me feel. I don't know if I know that. Let me tell you, when you have gone through things in life, when you have lost people, when you have faced depression, anxiety, anger, rage, divorce, those kinds of things that happen, abortion, so much of what you guys are here to march for, that kind of brokenness brings out of you God-given joy, a whole new understanding of his glory. And you are going to shine like you didn't shine before. Would you have chosen it? Probably not. You probably would not choose the avenues that I've described that have brought me to where I am in my love of God. Probably wouldn't choose it. But will you regret what God does with it in your life? You will not. You will not. If he's the author and he's writing it and not you, you're going to have some chapters that are hard but amazing. Worth it. Worth it. Every minute of it. So how does this joy find its way into these rocks and caves and deep holes in our stories? And I'm getting close to the end here. This image I'm going to call But God. We don't summon this stuff. We don't wring joy, peace, faith, perseverance. We don't wring that out of our own soul. If you're somebody who's like, I don't have the joy that I need to go with this, guys, you got to ask for it. It wasn't supposed to come from you. And that's something the world doesn't tell us. I don't have peace, Amy. With what I'm going through, I got anxiety just to beat the band, man. I can hardly breathe. That peace doesn't come from you. It's God-given peace, joy. Amy, I don't love those people on the street the way that I want to. I can walk by and, man, I don't even know if I feel anything when I walk by. Guys, I get it. It doesn't come from you. That's God-given love that you need alive in you. You ask him. You ask him, friend. That peace, that love, that joy, that hope. Those are God's gifts. And when he implants them in your lives and they grow, they are unstoppable. And so are you in the power of God. You won't be defeated. The enemy will be. You won't be. Because you've got God's gifts that you prayed for alive in you. Romans 15:3. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. The power of God, friends, the power of God. In Nehemiah 8:10, do not grieve, for the joy of yourself is your... No. I want to see how many people would look at me. The joy of the Lord, guys, is your strength. Can't do it without it. You might have some happiness, some flutterings, some stuff going on. You don't have joy if you don't have Christ. I will argue that every day, all day. That real God-given joy is his alone. He breathes it into us. He breathes life into us. His great joy poured out on us and in us as he sings and dances over us. His joy despite our brokenness, and we get to share in it. I want to end with a picture of most of my family. My adopted son is not able to be in this picture, and my oldest son and his wife are not. They were traveling the world with Concordia Irvine, by the way. If any of you are Irvine people, you got to talk to me because, yeah, we got connections out there. I mentioned last night that one of my strongest arguments on a personal level against abortion is the faces of 4 of my children, my adopted son and my 3 foster kiddos, because their life circumstances are the ones that the world justifies in saying, we can't care for those kids, they shouldn't be here. Not only that, what if mom had mental health issues? They did. What if dad is imprisoned and there's drug stuff involved? It was. They were. All of the what ifs, check, 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 check. Those kids, by world standards, wouldn't and shouldn't be here. But God. But God places the lonely in families. But God looked at my family, which in essence with our adopted son was pretty doggone broken, and chose us to foster and to bring in more. Not to look at our story and say, well, that eliminates us. We're off the list. Look what we've gone through. Nope. He was like, these guys are broken. They know that I'm the source. Let's do it again. I'm going to ask him again. They said yes once. Look what they went through. Man, if they're going to say yes again, I'm going to ask. And he did. And you know what? We did, because we've learned who he is and we trust the author. We trust the author of our family story, and we are not afraid to draw near to the really, really visibly broken because we know of our own brokenness. Joy, is our family still up there? Did you put them up there?
They are.
Oh, this is what you're supposed to be looking at. Joy resonates deep in this family. It has changed us, and I would argue it shines powerfully out of the rocks of our God-written story as our family attempts to live for Him. This is our broken family in the hands of God. Little lives that were lost have been found. The abandoned have been brought into family by the hand of God. No coincidence. He has given them and us cause for great joy in the midst of a whole lot of broken depression, addiction, imprisonment, and loss. Homelessness, street life, family. God's story being written through us. And we are forever changed. I pray that for you, friend. I pray whatever it is that God is going to do in your story, that you surrender to Him and you wait for His joy to take over your life and your story, your unbelief, your pain. It's coming. The joy of the Lord is coming, and it's available for you. Just ask. Let's pray. Father God, for as much as I would not have written the story and the chapters of my life the way that they have unfolded, I see you in all of it, every minute of it. I know you've been there. I know your faithfulness. I know that you have not left me lost, broken, and abandoned. Father God, you found me, and you continue to find me. And I pray that for everyone in this room, Lord, and within the sound of my voice, that they know and reach for the one who seeks them. The one who deals directly with our areas of depression, pain, anxiety, brokenness. The one who is capable, the one who shatters rock to find us. And the one who breaks our heart of stone and brings out of it light, your light, for your glory. In your name, amen. Oh, I totally can. Yeah.
Okay.
So can Josh.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, we have a few minutes, and then we'll transition and get the next presentation started and those sorts of things. But questions you guys have? Go ahead.
What happened to the other two kids?
We had, okay, that's actually a really cool reunification story. We have two little girlies that we call them ours for the time that they were with us. They're ours when they're there. Two little girls that were abandoned in Chicago from Tennessee. And they have returned to a family member there, which is a good situation. It's a Christ-honoring, believing grandma that we are in close contact with. And our little Nevaeh and JJ went back there.
Are you asking about the two other babies that our kiddos' mom had?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Talk about that. Yeah.
okay, that the mom had, our bio mom. Okay, so we had two of the little kiddos that are siblings that were on the screen right there. She has had two children. One of them is in the custody of the state and has some serious health issues. And the other little one, unfortunately, it is unknown where that baby went. That baby is gone. And that is all we know. Yeah. Yes?
Thank you for your sharing.
Thank you.
I was curious, what has been your
You know, I was raised as a believer, baptized young. I'm a pastor's daughter. And I would say I was probably 13 when I had what would be my come to Jesus moment. I was young. But what I've learned is that if you ask my testimony, man, I can talk to you about like this last year, it's all been like rebuilt, rebuilt and redone and renewed. So, yeah, but thank you for asking that. That is my background. And you know what? For those of you that share that background, that's a really priceless background to have. If you're carrying that legacy, carry it like it matters. Yeah. Okay, first of all, I want to really emphasize the word clinical. Because if they have that kind of a diagnosis, the first thing that I want to say to you if you're coming alongside them is you can't fix it. And that is something that as believers, we want to bring out verses and we want to bring, and we feel like with our words, we're going to have a real strong, and words can't reach that. Words don't reach that. They need help. So I would encourage in that circumstance, and I do anytime I come along, because you never know if the person that you're talking to, when they tell you they're depressed, if it's a friend of yours or if it's yourself, you don't know if it's a clinical situation or not. Sometimes it's circumstantial. It's just they got the blues. But you don't know the difference, and you're not going to be able to discern that. So I always encourage people to get help. I always do. And to take the stigma off of that entirely. I heard a speaker when I was probably in my 20s. It was at a Women of Faith conference, and she just said, it was Sheila Walsh. And it was the first time I heard a Christian woman say, I take a little pill every day, a little blue pill that I'll be taking for the rest of my life, an imbalance in my system. And that for me was a breath of life. So if they are medicated or they need to be, encourage them to have courage and encourage them to understand physically what is happening, because it's not their emotions and their feelings. Those are broken. Okay, Josh, you had a response?
Because I live with somebody that has clinical depression, so we can deal with that. I echo what Amy says. I would say, like she said, you can't fix it for them, but a lot of times just letting them know that you hear them, to listen, is enough, rather than trying to fix it. And second of all, in line with what she said about removing the stigma, we talk about how, if somebody has a cold and they take cold medicine, it helps fix that. A better picture would be, I'm diabetic. My pancreas just doesn't work. So I have to take insulin every day. And nobody looks down on that. That's just something my body needs to keep me healthy. And so I take insulin every day. For Amy, you take a pill every day that keeps her level and balanced. It's really the same thing, but it's really helpful just to let people know that you hear them, and that it's nothing it's something that you can talk about openly, because it's nothing to be, there's no stigma involved at all.
And don't affiliate it with their level of faith.
Yeah.
I still have people in my life, when I told you I'm in my 50s, that will attempt to do that with me. And I'm not rude, but I can't give it the time of day. Can't go there. If you had faith and if you prayed enough and if you whatever, don't you believe that would be removed? I'm like, you know what? I've prayed for that to be removed. It isn't God's choice yet to remove it. So what I've prayed now is, God, don't waste it. Use it. Use it. And he does. The way that I see it used in my life and even in my family, I raised 5 boys. And so they've seen that in my life when I'm suffering. I don't flaunt it and let it, full on whatever, but they've seen it. They've prayed over me when I'm struggling and stuff like that. What I've seen in our whole family is the way that God has used that part of my brokenness and that depression is that we are really quick to enter in with people that are suffering, because we have no stigma of people that are suffering, because we don't have it over ourselves, right? We will go there fast, and my kids will walk into a nursing home, into a hospital room, into a prayer area of our sanctuary really fast. My boys are drawn to the broken. And even having a brother in their family, an adult brother now who is really, really broken, it did not prevent my boys from wanting to start fostering and involving our lives deeply with a lot more brokenness. They were ready. They were ready because they know God's in it and walks with us. Does that answer your question some? It's complicated. Love them well. Let them know you see them. Speak hope. One of the other things I've said to people that are dealing with clinical depression is don't try to, at some level, you have to accept it, because at first you fight it like crazy. I don't want to have this. How do I get rid of it? And that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes it will be, but that's in God's hands. But they have a deep desire to get it out of their lives. And when you do that, you exasperate your depression and anxiety. You get anxious about your anxiety, and it multiplies itself. So there's an acceptance of, oh, I have this in my physical wiring. How can I get help for this? What can I do for this? And that acceptance is actually a relief for a lot of people that have depression. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, and then you kind of talked about how it was abuse or that you began foster care.
Yeah.
And added all of these new kiddos to your life. You also experienced like loss of family in a way.
Right.
Adopted son.
Right.
So those kind of moving in and out of your family change your perspective on the gift of you and the gift of just something you can control of.
Yes. Oh my goodness, you worded that very, very well. I was talking to a gal last night here who was 21 years old and adopted, Allie. I don't think she's still here this morning. But she said to me something about the courage that it takes for families to choose to adopt or to foster. I cannot tell you the level of fear believing people of all ages express when it comes to fostering. Or adopting. There is a misnomer. I don't know if that's the right word. It sounds really cool. There's a misconception and a misunderstanding that we are in control of what our families look like. That as long as we do this, we are us and everybody outside of it is them. And this is universal. We can control this. We had these babies. This is our family, right? And yet God continually is challenging that by what is family. It's always bigger. It's always bigger. His perspective on what is family and his call to who we love and how we love is always bigger than that. And yet, as believers, there's a safety and a sense of protection. And Josh and I come from a long line of Christian family on both sides. And yet, we received an incredible amount of skepticism about both adopting and fostering, not to their discredit. And it was a fear of they wanted to protect us from it. Because when you get that close to something, man, you're going to give your heart. You're going to give your heart away. Yes, you are. Are you going to get it broken? Probably. Probably. We've already been through that once. And we looked at each other and went, want to do it again? Let's do it again. It was that. And that's because once you've experienced that, you go through the God part of it and you see what he does. But we've had incredible heartbreak with it. There's no way around it. And yet at the same time, it's the family I've always dreamed of since I was a kid. You say, what, you dreamed of all that stuff that you read down that list? You know what? Yeah, I kind of did. I never, I didn't have the picture that family was going to be a closed, safe, protected unit that would never, we started, we've had people stay with our family. We call people family that we love, that we draw into relationship. And God has blown the doors off of what we thought family would look like. And there's nothing else I want more than that picture of those kids. I keep pointing at it and it's not even on the screen, but you know what I mean. Yeah. If you ever want to talk fostering or adopting, find me. We'll talk because the need is off the charts. In the state of Illinois alone, 25,000 kids waiting for families. One state. And we still were discouraged by a lot of believers from doing it. Your husband's a pastor. It's going to distract from his ministry.
Yeah, we're here because we're pro-life, right? We're pro-life. And so often the pro-life language gets reduced down to just preventing abortions. But what about the mamas who are scared to death right? Single moms that don't know what to do, they need to be loved. One of my favorite signs I saw yesterday was love them both.
Yeah.
Right? So we are actively redefining, or at least trying to open people's eyes to the reality that to be pro-life means you take care of the orphans and the widows, God says. And in today's language, that's scared single moms who don't have what it takes to raise a baby. We'll raise it then for you. That's being pro-life.
And something I didn't mention to her tells a part of that story, but that mama of 2 of those little kids, the siblings, the one who's had 4 that we know of, and she's actually had more, but she lived with us for 4 months when we took her in until the state made separation mandatory. But that we are still telling her, we are your team. We're your team no matter what this ends up looking like. We are still in contact. We're loving her exactly where she's at, and we will not refuse to see her or let go of her. It's not going to happen. In fact, it was poignant when one of the caseworkers said, what would she have to do to get you guys to turn your back on her? That was a poignant question because she was doing a whole lot. And we were like, nothing. We're in. We're in. I mean, we have to set boundaries and be safe and all that kind of stuff, but we're not going to abandon her because God brought her in to our lives. Don't know what that story is going to fully look like, where it begins and where it ends, but we're in. Any other questions?